everyone, and welcome to this episode of Behind the Wrestler. My guest at this time is none other than the former Hughes Academy champion, Krystal Kayne.
Hello, everyone.
Thank you very much for taking the time out and giving us an insight of your story. We're going to jump straight into it. And actually, the first question has probably been asked millions of times. Who, when, and where inspired you to become a professional wrestler? How did you go about it? And what was the struggles you had to face?
I can literally tell you the exact match that I watched on Raw that made me want to be a wrestler, and it was a title match between Mickie James and Beth Phoenix back in 2008. November, I think it was. And I watched it, and I was just like, girls do this? Because you always hear about The Rock and all that sort of stuff, and I was only... I think a teenager, like a young teenager at the time. And I was just like, I want to do that. But when you're 11, 12 years old, no one knows how to be a wrestler at that age. And you hunt around, but you don't know what to look for. And then one day, a friend of mine told me that a all-women's wrestling company was opening up in Auckland, which is now known as Maniacs United. And they had trainings, and I went to a training, and I just kind of never looked back. It was kind of that first taste of something that you had wanted to do for so long, and you were like, yes, I'm finally doing it.
Yeah.
But in terms of that, like as you mentioned, asking about the struggles and stuff, every wrestler has their struggles. You have your ups, you have your downs, you have your injuries, which are some of the most frustrating things because you're just sitting there on the sidelines and watching everyone else do what you want to do. And that happened to me a couple of times. I broke my nose very early on in my career, which put me out for 6 to 8 weeks. And while that doesn't seem like a lot of time in the big grand scheme of things, when you're sitting at training watching everyone else do stuff, when you just want to get in there but you can't because your face is broken, it's quite like it gives you the drive just to hurry up and get back in there.
Yep.
And comparing that to another issue that I had, I was out for 8 months, no, almost a year with a shoulder issue. And that was even harder because when you're sitting at all the shows and you can't even kind of knuckle in and do much within the back behind the scenes because your shoulder is just useless, and you just sit there, you watch the shows, and it was like it made me real hungry to get back. And I remember the second that I came back, I was like, taking the bull by the horns. I changed up a lot of stuff and started incorporating some new things within what I was doing as a wrestler, and even now I'm developing those into some new stuff, which I'm really, really excited for. And I'm glad this COVID thing is almost over because now I can actually do what I have planned. So that's also really exciting.
Yeah. Having your debut match, because, throughout your career, mostly you've worked with Frankie Quinn.
Yes.
And getting to, you obviously know each other like the back of your guys' hands. So you guys can just jump into a match without even, hey, this person didn't show up one time or something, or someone's injured, you to go out and do something, and you guys could just do it like that. Working with her and pretty much wrestling her up and down, what was like the difficulty times that you guys had to go through and the challenging stuff that you two had to go through while working out in your match, and then eventually getting to the level where you guys are at now, where you could just be like, yep, we could do this, we could do this, we could do this, and we could do that.
It's always a struggle in the beginning because there's so much you want to do and so much you want to try. And I started out, as you mentioned, I started out with Frankie back in 2011, I believe. And we've wrestled God knows how many times by this point. As you said, our first matches were together, and if you look at us back then and look at us now, you just see this insane amount of growth, not just, as we've gotten older and grown up and become more mature, but just as wrestlers, we've become a lot more well-rounded, and we've found kind of found our styles. And we only did that because we wrestled each other so much, I think. And having that constant person that's always there, it's like, hey, let's do this. It works. Let's keep doing this. We know it works. It's like, okay, how can we change it up the next time? Oh, let's do this. And with both of us, we've always been able to build off of something. So you start off with something real basic, say just a reversal of something, and then you build and build and build, and all of a sudden you just have this thing and it just works and it gets the reaction every single time. And there was a time where we wrestled each other so often that it was hard to come up with new stuff because we knew what worked. But if we wrestled, say 1 month, and then the next month, while it was the same crowd, so we had to try change it up because otherwise the crowd's going to get bored.
Right.
But when we were in different places, it was a lot easier to fall back on what we knew worked. But even then, we now coming into our now almost 9 years of wrestling, we have to now develop even further and build even further because the crowds are changing and we get to try new stuff and be more adventurous and go out there and really just put what we know, not just only to the test, but challenge ourselves to do something different every time instead of relying on what we know. Because if we don't do something new, we're always going to be the same Krystal Kayne and the same Frankie Quinn. And we're just going to become static. We don't want to be static. We want to go from down here to up here to up here to up here. And that's the only way you're going to get any better, is you do new shit.
And like, you know, because you guys have a whole lot of pressure getting put on you by Mr. Hughes, and when he launched his announcement to that he was going to be doing shows down in Wellington, and you guys were, you know, one of the first matches that he announced, and you know, he approached you too and was like, "We're doing this show for the very first time. I need you to be like the pillar match of it." And you know, there was other talent on the card and stuff, but the eyes and the main match was you and Frankie Quinn. What was the pressure going through your guys' mind, and like, how did you guys prepare for it? Because it's a big deal, because he's been working. He worked on those shows for a very long time, and when he got the green light, he's like, "Cool, I know my two people who I know are gonna blow the roof off the place," and it was you two. So, what was that whole entire experience like?
When I found out that match was happening, how do I say this in a PG way? I freaked out.
You're allowed to swear, so it's
okay, thank God. I was freaking the fuck out. I was absolutely terrified because we did the same thing when the Auckland show started. We were the girls' match on the show, and that was terrifying enough, because that was like, while it was one of like the second official show of Hughes Academy, it was the beginning of Hughes Academy, is what we came to know what it was, and bringing it down to Wellington, an entirely different crowd of fans. And that's terrifying enough as it is. And I can't speak on Frankie's behalf, but I was literally sitting outside that venue shaking. I was that terrified. I had no idea how it was going to go. And even though we can work a match like nobody's business and work together and make sure everything hits right, it's still terrifying to know you've got so many eyes on you because of your history. And even though we haven't wrestled very often together down in Wellington, the people down there know us in terms of the other wrestlers and whatnot. So we had all these eyes on us. And the fact that we went out there and did what we always do and walked out the back and were proud of what we put out there, and to know we can still pull the reaction in an entirely different area of the country.
Yeah.
And I can get everybody to hate me, and that's my favorite part. And in Wellington, as soon as you mention Auckland, they hate you.
Yeah,
that was the best part. You mention you're from Auckland, and they're just like, boo. Well, they didn't throw stuff, but I bet if they had stuff to throw, they would have.
Oh yeah, definitely.
But there's always been a pressure, I think, just to make sure we perform well and we do a good job, and make sure we take care of each other in the ring, because, like, without being Captain Obvious, I'm pretty much twice the girl's size. So, there's a lot of things we have to take into consideration and make sure we keep each other safe. And that's always first and foremost. And as long as we walk out the back and we can walk ourselves out the back, we know we've done a good job.
Yeah. And like, because, I was sitting backstage and I know Graham was really, zoned in on this match, because he was backstage just full on zoned in. He told everybody to get lost and he was zoned in. It was him and Mr. Rob over there just zoned in into this match, because you know how important it was. And, in his eyes, you could see, like, there's certain things that you guys would hit. And he was like, okay, cool, perfect. You guys nailed that. And then there'll be certain things you guys would, like, go off to do. It's like, oh, and then you hit it, like, with perfect timing and position. And you'd be like, okay, cool. Okay, let's keep the momentum going. And, like, to see him, like, that excited, which I rarely get to see, like, getting to see him, like, watch a match and sit down and be very excited about, which was really, really heartwarming.
Yeah,
and for people,
he doesn't show a lot often. He says it, but you don't see. He'll say it, but you don't see it.
Yeah, you don't see it.
And when you see it, it's just kind of like inside that ice heart of mine, there's like a little flame, and it just melted a little.
So, like, because, like, for people who don't know, obviously, that the first two original trainees for Hughes Academy was Krystal Kayne and Frankie Quinn. So that's why, they're the pillars of Hughes Academy. So in any time that there needs to be a high pressure stuff going on, those are the first two people that have so much pressure on them, and they always deliver. Sometimes there's a hit or miss, but they always deliver.
That's
yeah. And so now, doing getting all this experience and stuff under your belt and stuff, when also you're going up and down with your injuries and stuff. The opportunity that you had to compete for the Hughes Academy Championship and then won the Hughes Academy Championship. How did you prepare for it? What did you feel after it? And how was all of that whole entire experience, where there was lots of people, and I don't mind saying this at all, there was lots of people who told you that you did not deserve it, and there was lots of people that also continue to, tell you that why this or why that, but a decision was made. You were given an opportunity, and you ran with it and made something out of it. So what was that whole entire experience like?
First of all, when I found out I had the match, it was also a holy shit, this is actually happening, because you always watch other people in the matches and competing and whatnot, and even though I'm literally watching these people and I share a locker room with these people, until it actually became my reality that I was competing for the title, it just seemed so far out of reach. And when I was given the opportunity, I had to do what I could and make sure I was as ready as I could. I was training really hard at the time. I was trying to, I was doing all this research, and especially on my opponent, who was Misty, and she's one of the longest running wrestlers in New Zealand in terms of the women, and she's a hard-hitting opponent, I'll tell you that. You don't go in there expecting it to be rainbows and butterflies. It's gonna be hammers and bulldozers. Like, you're gonna come out a little worse for wear, no matter the outcome. And just getting to share the ring with her in that moment, and to overcome that mountain, essentially, that is Misty, and to win against a competitor like her was very, very humbling, I think, and overwhelming at the same time. And because I'm such a no-nonsense person, when I won it, all I wanted to do was cry because I could not believe it. But I'm just like, no, don't cry, don't cry, don't cry. Walk backstage, bawled my eyes out. I couldn't believe it. And it was such an experience that I know for a fact that it's going to be a fight to get back there, because that was such a pillar of my career. And then with all the kind of twists and downfalls and turns that my career has taken over the last few years, it's like, it's going to, like, that match was a mountain to climb. It's going to be a mountain to climb to get back there. And I think that's one of my biggest drives at the moment, is that was a high point in my career. I want it back.
Yeah.
I'm going to do whatever it takes to get it back.
Yeah.
If it takes reinventing myself, if it takes, alienating myself from everybody, whatever it takes, I'm going to make sure I get back to that point where I can walk out there and be like, hey, I'm actually competing for this thing right now.
Yeah.
Whatever anyone else is saying, they can go shove it where the sun don't shine. It's there's a saying to do with lions and sheep. I can't remember it off the top of my head, but if people want to say I don't deserve shit, then that's a them problem, not a me problem.
Yeah, 100%.
That says more about them than it says about me. If they want to make comments, then go for it.
Yeah.
If
100%.
they're trying to knock me down, good luck. I'm a hard tree to move. Like, you're not going to move me very far very quickly. And that's also kind of part of my drive. It's like, people want to say this sort of stuff, and it's like, well, here I am. I'm still here. If I was any of these things that people have said about me over the years, then why would I still be here nearly 9 years later?
Yeah.
I've dug my heels in, and I've made sure I've stood my ground. And someone said to me one time, always stand on principle, even if you stand alone.
Yeah.
And in terms of wrestling, that's one thing I've always kept in the back of my mind, because you're always going to have those people, no matter where you are in life, whether it's your career, whether it's your family, whether it's wrestling, they're everywhere. So it's just one of those things. It's life, it's a bitch, and you deal with it. Yeah. And the only problem is, these people probably haven't realized yet that I'm a bigger bitch than life is. So if they want to keep saying shit, by all means, I got some pretty thick skin, so good luck to them, really.
And you mentioning that, you're trying to reinvent yourself and everything, and your biggest motivator and stuff. So I'm going to move on to this special little trip that you took over to the UK to get remotivated, reinvent yourself and everything. So you're at a point of your career where you wanted to give up. There's no ifs and or buts about it. You just wanted to give up, and you didn't want to do it anymore. You didn't feel like you needed to do it anymore. You just felt like you couldn't continue on. So you came to certain people for help. Actually, you came to plenty of people for help.
Yeah.
Plenty of people just didn't want to help you. Those continuous people who wanted to help you was always there for you. So you ended up taking a trip to the UK.
I did.
It was only for a month. It was only a short-term trip, but that month was probably the most growth that you've been through as a wrestler and as a person, because you knew how hard you had to work back to where you want to get to. And obviously it gave you new goals and new aspirations of, this is what I want to do. This is how I want to do it. I don't care what anybody else says. So let's talk about the experience that you had over in the UK.
Oh, England. It was something.
It was something now, wasn't it? you had the likes of wrestling as Olaf.
Yes.
You've
Dressed up
had
in a costume, and everyone
yeah,
thought I broke my neck.
yeah.
It was something.
You had the experience of doing a seminar prior to that, which was Johnny Storm and Jody Fleisch. Was an intense training session, because I can concur, because I did it with you. But you were the only girl who did it, and you pushed through, and made me super proud of seeing that you just pushed through and continued on without stopping on anything. You went at your own pace, and I know you impressed Jody, because he was very fond of you and gave you new things to do. Well, in that seminar, which I'll let you explain, and then you also had the experience of training at Quality Wrestling with Rishi and Raj, the Ghost Brothers, which you had a one-on-one training session with them as well, which helped you reignite everything, and pretty much like show you why you shouldn't give up. So I'm going to let you take over and let you explain all this experience that you had in the UK, and have that new momentum and that no die attitude, and a new motivation of, this is where I want to head towards.
Yeah, like, you're not wrong. I was at that point where it wasn't that I'd had enough, so to speak, but it was becoming something that to me was starting to feel like a chore. And I was like thinking to myself, if this is how I'm going to be, I need to bow out before I stop caring that much and someone gets hurt. And that's the last thing that I want. It would never be my intention, but if I don't care, then when I'm in a match, it's going to be the same sort of deal, and I'm not going to put somebody's life in jeopardy. And I was ready to bow out, and I dabbled. I'd try to come back to training. I would just end up sitting on the sidelines. There'd been times where Graham literally grabbed me by the back of the neck and threw me into shit. And as much as I would hate him for it at the time, as soon as I got the ball rolling, I was just like, okay, so this is what it feels like. But the very next week I'll be like, oh no, I'm not coming. And it became such a pattern to the point where I just stopped training altogether and didn't train for a very long time, which as a wrestler is never a good idea. And that's something that I was starting to realize towards the end of last year. And I'm like, the longer I don't train, the more likely something is going to go wrong. It's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when.
Yeah.
And when I had this opportunity to go with you over to England, I thought this is going to be the make it or break it. If this doesn't change my mind, then I need to stop now.
Yeah.
But the second I stepped, I think my first training with Rishi. It was, wasn't it?
Yeah. Yeah.
My
you mostly focused on Quality Wrestling and with Rishi and Raj Ghosh over there.
One of my first sessions over there was a one-on-one session with Rishi, and I walked in, and the first thing he asked me after we did warm-up, which I've never been a cardio girl. Cardio is not my friend. I like carbs, not cardio. It was like that little bit of running. I was like, no, I'm done. But then I was like, no, this is England. This is not New Zealand. I need to put a different mind frame on. I need to sit down, shut up, buckle up, listen, and get on with it. And one of the first things he asked me while I was there was like, what did I want to do? What did I want to work on? What did I want to get out of the session? And I mentioned mat work and chain wrestling and all those sorts of things. And it's the one time that what I've said to a trainer probably has shocked them, because he was not expecting me to ask to work on chain wrestling and all that sort of stuff, because normally everyone wants to do jumps and flips and
definitely.
those sorts of things. And I was like, I'm a simple woman. I like the simple stuff. It's the backbone of wrestling. It's where it all started, and it's always been one of my favorite parts. Every time we'd do chain work or mat work at Hughes Academy, I was right in there. And especially in the beginning, I was in there, 30 minutes at a time, doing chain stuff and getting in there again and doing all that chain and that mat work and all the different intricacies of reversals. I was just like, shit, this is what it's like. I still kind of know what I'm doing. It's still an instinct that I have. And it made me realize I actually can still do this.
Mm-hmm.
I may not be as quick, I may not be as small, I may not be as smooth as I used to be, but that's to come when you don't train for 3 years. And the fact that I stepped in there and it was easy is not the word.
Yeah.
But easy to remember.
Yeah.
I guess the way to describe it. And sitting in there and learning all these new things and different ways to incorporate basic chain into Krystal Kayne's character, into me, it was like, this is what I've missed. And this is what I've missed every single time I said, oh no, I can't come to training. Oh no, I've got this. Oh no, I can't get there. Making every excuse under the sun. And I think it was especially that session that made me remember why I loved it, because you can never know it all. Like Rishi and Graham, have known each other for years. They know each other and have trained together, been trainers of one another. And it's like,
yeah,
I've just kind of stepped back into where I was and did all this stuff that I didn't think I could do anymore. And I owe England so much, and I owe you so much for inviting me along, because if I didn't go, I think last year would have been my last year.
Yeah.
But after going and training with Rishi and Raj and the likes of Jodie and Johnny Storm and meeting Paul Ash, it just reminded me, yeah, this is something that I want to do. And after several discussions with a couple of them, it's like I figured out from that trip what I needed to do,
right,
to kind of find my groove again and get back into it, because Krystal Kayne's always just been Krystal Kayne. There's never necessarily been anything special.
Yeah.
I've just been a wrestler. So that was where I decided I need to, as I mentioned earlier, reinvent myself and bring and incorporate a whole bunch of things that people probably wouldn't expect to see from me. And it's some really exciting stuff, and I've got England to thank for that. Those couple of weeks there were probably the best thing that could have happened in terms of my wrestling career, and definitely gave me the motivation to keep going and to push through it and to stop making excuses. And I think that was one of my biggest growths. And you could ask Graham, I've probably given him just about every single excuse in the book, and he will probably attest for that. So it's like, I want to get back into it. I want to do what I love. And wrestling is something that I love. And there's so many places you can go and things you can do, and it just opens up so many doors. And I think I lost sight of that, and that was one of my main issues. So now that I've kind of been refocused and I've got my crosshairs aligned in the right path, I think it's only onwards and upwards from here, which is really, really exciting.
Yeah, it's like that. When you're over there, if anybody wants to say it's a full-time job over here, it isn't. It's more of a hobby.
You're not wrong. Here, it's child's play compared to England.
Yeah. So like when you can see the difference of what Graham has been telling us while we've been training. Is like, if you have aspirations to go anywhere, especially in the UK, you have to step up your game. There is no ifs and or buts about it. You just have to step up your game, or you're just going to be chewed up and spit out. It's just how it is. You either adapt and evolve, or you just get chewed up and spit out. And pretty much right. So like when you saw the difference when you're over there, like you had to switch gears like pretty much instantly.
Instantly.
yeah, like you get that first taste of, okay, cool. This isn't like anything back at home, because over there it's a full-time job.
Exactly. And
You
it
know,
was one of those things where in those years that I wasn't continuously training, I trained maybe a handful of times. I trained more times while I was in England than I had in the last 2 to 3 years.
yeah,
And it was also one of those things, I trained more time in those 2 weeks, or even a week really,
yeah.
than I probably would in the space of, a quarter of a year.
But it's something that needed to happen, because like over there it's just like your schedule is, you train, you go do shows, you go train, you go to the gym, you put in the hours, you have maybe a day, maybe 2 days off a week. Other than that, you're either training, you're either doing something wrestling, or you're promoting the show that you're going to be on, or
Exactly.
you're talking to other promoters, getting feedback, getting advice, how to get better, what do I need to improve of, how do I need to improve of. And it's like your own schedule, right? You set up your own schedule. It's like, okay, cool, I've got a training session here, I've got a one-on-one session here, I've got a cinema that's, this is close by, there's a wrestling show slash some training stuff going down there, so I could go there, and so on and so forth, right? So like over there, it's a whole different ball game. And then coming back home and having that mentality and keeping that momentum is only just a test of like, I've had that small taste, I want more. How do I get more? I got to continue what I'm doing. How do I get back there? By working my ass off to get back there.
Exactly. And I had this whole plan. I got back, I got myself resettled in, made a few other changes in my life, and was gearing up to get ready to come back to training. And then COVID hit.
Yeah.
Fucking COVID ruined everything.
Yeah.
But
Put everyone's plans on hold.
But even though that happened, it's like it's still in the back of my mind. Like the desire to get back hasn't stopped. I'd even discussed with Graham, I set a date pretty much on when I was coming back to training, which is this weekend, believe it or not. And I've not been this excited to train in a long time. And I'm just like, is it Saturday yet? Is it Saturday yet? Is it Saturday yet? And I'm really looking forward to it, because I know the work that I have to put in to get to the standard that I used to be, but I want to surpass what I used to be.
Yeah.
And I think Lynn made me realize being what I was isn't going to be good enough. I need to be better. I need to look past being who I was, because if I just aim for that, I'm never going to go any higher.
Yeah.
I need to pass that. It's like aiming for the moon, but you really want to go to the next galaxy or whatever. It's like, I know where I want to be and I know where I want to get to. Being what I used to be is a good starting point, but I can't just stop there. I have to go further. I have to do more than that. And so this is going to be the first step into changing that whole, the last 4 years of Krystal Kayne.
Yeah.
It's going to be like, who is she? I don't know her.
That's like trying to reinvent yourself and evolve as a wrestler. You get to a point where you're stuck.
Yeah.
And everybody gets to that point where you're stuck, where you lose purpose of, like, pretty much in yourself, and you stop believing. It's like, okay, so how do I evolve? How do I get better? By pretty much getting out of your comfort zone and going to places that's scary, and putting yourself in those environments that's scary, that is only going to help you and break out of your shell. And like, with everybody comes to a point where, okay, I've been doing this for so many years. How do I get better? How do I evolve myself?
How do I be a better version of what I am?
Yeah, exactly, right. How do I break to that next level? And you got to have a tough chin for it, because when you get, plenty of people don't want to be told what they need to hear, but they want to be told what they want to hear. So like, when plenty of people go for feedback with their matches and everything, they want to be told how good they are. They don't want to have any negative or anything that they want to be improving on. They just want to know that, yes, I'm more hot shit. I want you to tell me I'm more hot shit. But having a tough chin and being like, okay, cool, what do I need to improve on? How do I improve on it? And to get honest feedbacks and opinions and stuff. Some people take that the wrong way, and other people will be like, okay, cool. Yeah.
And it's never a personal attack. It's there to help, and you can react however way you want. But if you don't act on that feedback, then there's going to be a point where people will stop.
Yeah.
And if you don't take on that feedback, no matter how critical it is, you're never going to be able to improve, because if you think what you're doing is already good, then if you're good, why do you need to keep trying? And then people flatline. And that was one thing that I think actually did happen to me. I flatlined because I felt like, okay, I'm doing a good job. But then, people started saying, okay, you need to work on this. And I got defensive. I'll admit it, hand on Bible, I got defensive. I'd always make up excuses and try to explain why things happened the way they did. And it took me a long time to get past that. It's not that I thought I was the best thing since sliced bread. I just didn't like the idea that I was doing bad.
Right.
So it took me a long time to realize that. And Graham and I have fought over it several times. And it's one of those things where it was up to me to fix that. It was up to me to get past that. If I wasn't going to get past that, then that was all on me. And I think with England, I got past that, because over there, they don't give a fuck. No. There's so many wrestlers over there. You pick up shit, then they'll be like, okay, sweet, I'll just go find someone else.
Yeah, they can. They'll always find replacements.
Exactly.
Like, if you're not wanting to be what the promoter wants you to be, because at the end of the day, you show up, you do your job. Yeah. You introduce yourself to everyone, and shake everybody's hand and introduce yourself and say hello properly. You go up to the promoter, and if there's a specific thing that the promoter wants you to do in your match,
you do it.
You do it. You don't be like, nah, that's not my gimmick. It's just they booked you for a specific reason. They want you to do this specific reason, and they want you to see if you are ready for, like, okay, cool, this guy's going to be something on my shows, or this guy isn't going to be something on my shows. Because he's either willing to listen or he's not willing to listen.
That's one of the things I always make sure I do. I always like, what needs to be done in this match? Always make sure I find out what that needs to be. And if I'm told something specific, I make sure it's worked into the match. If I'm just told, go do a good match, I do my best to make sure that the match is as good as it can possibly be for that time. And it's just a matter of realizing wrestling is so interchangeable, and things change at the drop of the hat. You can be wrestling someone 1 second, next thing you know, they're not even there, and you're wrestling an entirely different person, and you have 15 minutes to figure out what you do.
Yeah.
And that's happened a couple of times, and it's one of those things, that's when you learn the most, I think, because you're forced into an uncomfortable situation, and you have no choice but to perform.
Yeah.
Those always end up being some of the best matches, I think.
Because like
they are so fresh and essentially a raw match, because you've just figured that out within, as you're walking out the door, so to speak. And it's, those are, while they're the most rewarding, they're also the hardest, because you haven't had time to make your backup plan if something doesn't go right, or to figure out what it really is that you're trying to achieve, because you've had 5 seconds to figure out your start, your middle, and your finish. It's one of those things, but like they are the most rewarding. I definitely
and like for a wrestler, it's very hard to be a worker. To learn how to be a worker is one of the most difficult things to learn, because like a difference between being like, I'm a wrestler, to being I'm a worker. If a worker gets put into any situation, they will know how to, come out and, assess it and be like, cool, we should go this direction, or we should go this direction. This will make sense, this won't make sense, and so on and so forth. So adapting from a wrestler to a worker, which is essentially what you're trying to do. What is what are some of the challenges so far that you've had to face of adapting, of becoming a worker instead of just being a wrestler?
It's one of those things where I think the more uncomfortable situations you're put in, the more you're forced to learn how to be a worker.
Right.
And you have to adapt to so many things. And I went from wrestling the same person almost every month to wrestling a different person every month or every 6 weeks. And even though that's your job, if it's someone you don't train with, it can be a little bit tougher, but there's always ways around things. And then you can work with some people who just aren't willing to work with you, and those are some of the biggest challenges you have to adapt to as well, because they want to get their shit in, so to speak, but none of their shit makes sense.
Yeah.
But then you have to adapt to that type of person that you're wrestling. And in some situations, you've got to make the best out of it. In some situations, you can manipulate it and make it work the way it's supposed to. But when you can't, you just kind of have to roll with the punches. And I think I have to give a lot of kudos to Graham to putting me in a lot of uncomfortable situations. And
he does like to do those.
Yeah, and it's like, you wrestle somebody, you go from wrestling people who have been in the business for 2, 3, 4, 5 years, and next thing you're wrestling someone and it's their first match on one of your shows, and you're just kind of like, oh shit.
And that's pressure.
A lot of pressure, because you've got to make sure that this person gets over with the crowd. And you're not doing your job. And that's what I think I struggled with the most, is making sure everything went the way that it was supposed to. And that was always been a struggle, because feeling like what I knew in some situations wasn't enough to get them through. And even when, my experience at whatever time it was double what there was, I still felt like I didn't know enough, and I'd be asking 20 million questions to make sure I was organizing everything correctly and making sure things were going to go to plan. And I didn't want to put either of us in a situation where we looked bad or someone got hurt. And so I found that to be my biggest struggle throughout the years. But then also knowing that I was trusted with those situations, I think is what got me through a lot of them, because it's like, okay, so I'm trusted with wrestling this person on our show. They're here for the first time. So having that level of trust between myself and Graham in terms of knowing that I'm going to do my best in those situations, I think has always helped out a lot, because he's like always said to me, you know what you're doing, go do it.
Yeah.
Just, you know what to do. And here I was still asking if a suplex worked. And it's a suplex. It's always going to work. So it's like, and I would always second guess myself a lot, especially in those situations. And I think while I did have a lot of self-doubt, now when I look back on those situations, I think to myself, they probably couldn't have gone any better at that time. Had it been a year down the track, it would have been better than that time, yes. But at the time, I did the best that I could. And you can only strive to be the best you can.
Yeah.
And as long as you're striving to be the best, you're not going to, you'll make mistakes and you'll fall over, but you're never going to fail, because you're still moving in the right direction. And that's what I think now, with where I've got my mindset. I'm going in the right direction. And I was definitely not going in the right direction the last couple of years, but now, it finally clicked. And I'm pretty sure, coming back to Gary, I'm pretty sure it was him who said, it can take years to click.
Yeah.
It could be within 2 years, it can be within 20 years. It just took me 8.5, I'm one of the lucky ones that didn't have
takes a while.
career and then realize, oh shit, this is what I should be doing.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I've got the ball. I've just got to run with it. Sky's the limit at this point, and I've just got to push it through and get where I want to go.
What is next for Krystal Kayne?
Oof. I don't want to let out any of my secrets. You know?
Like what's next? What kind of goals do you have for yourself, and what is upcoming for Krystal Kayne?
I want the title back. I know that for a fact. Okay. I've got my eyes on that for sure, and it's kind of one of my, while getting better is one of my main motivators, that title is definitely a motivator, because it's one of those things where at that particular moment in time, you are one of the best in that company. And I kind of want that badge. I don't know if that's bad of me to say, but I want to be able to say I'm a champion again. I feel like it's Krystal's time to shine. You know, I've got my backbone back. I'm gonna, you know, bulldoze through whatever I have to get what I want. And so I kind of feel sorry for whoever I'm in the ring with in the next few months, because there's a whole new side that they haven't seen. And that's what's exciting, is I don't think the New Zealand women know what what they're in for at the moment, because I've got a drive right now, and it's definitely going forward.
You just got to not lose that drive again. That's the whole.
I won't. Don't you worry. I will not.
That's the key right there, is not lose that drive again. And like, you know, to have wanting the Hughes Academy Championship back isn't you know, a bad thing or anything. It's an amazing motivator and stuff, because, you know, it pushes you to get to your limits and exceed your limits to get to where you want to get. Like, if you want to be champion again, ain't nobody gonna stop that but yourself.
Exactly. It's me who is going to be my biggest hurdle, and it's always been like that. And it's just a matter of me pretty much kicking myself in the ass and moving forward, and just realizing no time for excuses anymore. Excuses get you nowhere. It's hard work and determination, and I've got to instill that in myself again, and I think I'm definitely well on the way to being able to do that.
Yeah, definitely. Is there anything that you would like to say to the viewers that will watch this episode, or do you have any advice for anybody?
Advice: if you've got a dream, go for it. I hear so many people talk about things they want to do in life, not just with wrestling, but in general. And like, but I can't do that. I could never do that. Take the leap, take the jump. When I took that jump and moved into wrestling, I have met so many amazing people, made so many good friends, and I've got a good support system within the community. And I like to think that had I not taken that jump, I would not be the person that I am today. I would not be as kind of strong-minded and strong-willed. You know, I know I spoke about making excuses and whatnot, but I credit wrestling to being the reason why I want to get to where I want to get, regardless of what situation I'm in. And so my advice is definitely just take the leap of faith, take that jump. If you don't take that jump, you're just going to live on what ifs for the rest of your life, and that's no way to live your life. And in saying that, I want to thank the people that have always been in my corner. I don't know if I got many fans, because I can be a bit of a bitch, but the ones that have been there and stuck by my side, those are the ones that I credit a lot to, and I credit a lot of my growth to, and helping me through the shit that I've had to deal with in the last few years to make sure I've stayed on the right path and stayed on the right track as much as possible. And I just thank them. And if there are a few fans out there, I guess I thank you too.
Thank you for taking the time out and giving us an insight of Krystal Kayne. Super excited to see what you've got planned. Super excited to see
any plans. No one's going to expect it. I promise you that.
Super excited to see when you get the opportunity to get the Hughes Academy championship match, and also super excited to see when you earn that championship back, because I think it'll be well deserved, and I think it'll be a whole lot more rewarding this time around than the first time.
For sure, because there'll be so much work into this one. I think I'm ready now. I wasn't ready then. I'm ready now.
Thank you everybody for joining us, and I'll catch everybody on the next episode.